Hello and welcome back to This Week in Biotech, edition 63. Today I'm covering biotech and pharma news from July 25th to July 31st, 2025. And first I'm going to give an update again on Sarepta. They had another dramatic week. So last week's recap, just quickly, Sarepta reported a third death tied to its AAV platform, this time in limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, that prompted the FDA to request a hold to Elevidys shipments, even though the limb-girdle muscular dystrophy death was not associated with Elevidys. It used the same platform. And so the FDA decided to hold Elevidys shipments for both ambulatory and non-ambulatory patients, even though the deaths were only in non-ambulatory patients, which means the worst sort of case of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Sarepta complied, paused US distribution, and agreed to add a black box warning on Elevidys. The FDA also placed a clinical hold on all limb-girdle muscular dystrophy trials and revoked Sarepta's AAV RH74 platform designation. Roche then paused international shipments in FDA-dependent markets. So over the past weekend, there was a death in Brazil. An 8-year-old boy died and he was on Elevidys, but Sarepta and Roche both said that this was unrelated to Elevidys, and FDA followed in a few days after, confirming that this was unrelated to Elevidys. And on July 29th, the FDA recommended lifting the voluntary hold on Elevidys, but only for ambulatory patients. And they said that non-ambulatory patients would remain on pause, and new studies would likely be required to support broader access. Markets reacted quickly, and Sarepta stock jumped over 38% pre-market, and analysts at Oppenheimer upgraded the stock to outperform, citing renewed confidence in the Elevidys risk-benefit profile. JP Morgan also moved its rating from underweight to neutral, but warned that regaining physician, patient, and investor trust may take time. But optimism wasn't universal. Barclays downgraded Sarepta to underweight, raising liquidity concerns tied to debt, milestone obligations, and access to its $600 million credit rollover. Meanwhile, the European Medicines Agency issued a negative opinion on Elevidys, further clouding its international prospects. Then, on July 30th, the story took a sharp political turn. Dr. Vinay Prasad, head of the FDA Biologics Division and the person behind the agency's recent Elevidys actions, abruptly resigned. The FDA has named George Tidmarsh, a recent appointee and former biotech executive, as acting head of CBER. Prasad's departure followed mounting criticism from conservative commentators and patient advocacy groups. According to Stat News and the AP, his position became untenable after pausing Elevidys trials and shipments, a move he defended based on safety concerns, but which triggered fierce backlash from parents, biotech leaders, and media outlets. In response, the FDA partially relented, as I said, allowing ambulatory use to resume. Prasad has long expressed skepticism towards Sarepta's platform AAVRH74 and the FDA's past flexibility with gene therapy approvals. But his caution clashed with growing political and patient pressure for broader access, especially under an administration that prioritizes speed and autonomy in medical decisions. Analysts now say that Prasad's exit could represent a shift toward a more permissive tone for gene therapy and rare disease reviews, potentially benefiting Sarepta and other developers navigating an uncertain regulatory landscape. And so Sarepta wasn't the only company to quote-unquote benefit from Vinay Prasad's sudden resignation. It also triggered a wave of investor optimism, particularly for companies recently hit by regulatory pushback. So stocks like Replimune, Capricor, and again Sarepta surged following the news, with Replimune gaining over 100% after analysts suggested Prasad may have played a key role in its recent FDA rejection. Yesterday, President Donald Trump has sent direct letters to the CEOs of 17 major pharmaceutical companies, including Pfizer, Merck, Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, Gilead, Novartis, and AbbVie, demanding aggressive changes under his most favored nation pricing policy. The letters, shared publicly by Truth Social, give the firms until September 29, 2025 to commit to the following. Offer Medicaid pricing that matches the lowest cost paid in any other OECD country. Apply MFN pricing at launch for all new introduced drugs. enabled direct-to-consumer pricing models for frequently used high-volume medicines, and return excess foreign manufactured drug revenue to American patients and taxpayers. Trump warned publicly that if companies refuse to step up, the administration will, quote, deploy every tool in our arsenal, unquote, a hint at potential regulatory action, tariff threats, and expanded drug import programs. Shares of Pfizer, Merck, and AstraZeneca and others dropped roughly 2 to 4% following the announcement. Industry groups like Pharma and Bio expressed concern that such sweeping pricing mandates could dampen investment and harm future biopharmaceutical innovation. Experts see this move as more of a symbolic than definitive. Legal and political challenges remain, especially given past most favored nation attempts that have been blocked in court. The narrowed approach, applying MFN only to Medicaid and new drugs, may be more realistic but lacks legislative backing. Earlier this week, Moderna received positive CHMP recommendations for their LP 8.1 adapted COVID-19 vaccine, now authorized for individuals as young as 6 months across the EU ahead of 2025 and 2026 respiratory season. The European Commission has since granted Moderna full marketing authorization, paving the way for rollout of its updated Spikevax formulation across all EU member states and select EEA countries. However, Moderna's momentum is tempered by internal restructuring as the company announced a 10% workforce reduction as a part of broader cost-cutting plan, citing weaker than expected vaccine demand and delays in its combination COVID-flu program. Moderna CEO reaffirmed plans for up to 8 new approvals in the next 3 years as the company shifts focus to oncology and rare diseases. AbbVie is in advanced talks to acquire Gilgamesh Pharmaceutical, a clinical stage company developing next-generation psychedelic-derived therapies for depression, anxiety, and PTSD for approximately $1 billion. The move builds on AbbVie's existing partnership with Gilgamesh, which could yield up to $1.95 billion in milestone payments. The potential deal underscores Big Pharma's growing confidence in neuroplastogen-based treatments and is expected to be announced in the coming weeks. The news sparked a rally across the psychedelics biotech space, reinforcing broader investor momentum in mental health innovation. So this week, the FDA also approved 2 first-in-class therapies for serious rare diseases. The first one is Apellis' Empaveli. The FDA has approved Empaveli as the first ever treatment for C3 glomerulopathy and primary immune complex membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis in patients aged 12 and older. In the phase 3 Valiant trial, Empaveli delivered a 68% reduction in proteinuria, stabilized kidney function, and achieved 71% clearance of C3 deposits, delivering consistent efficacy across both native and post-transplant patients. This broad label underscores significant unmet need in rare kidney disease and solidifies Empaveli's position as a compelling entry in complement-targeted therapy. And secondly, the FDA approved PTC's therapeutic Sephience, which is an oral therapeutic for phenylketonuria or PKU, covering children and adults aged 1 month and older across all PP phenylalanine responsive subtypes. The phase 3 Affinity study showed about 63% average reduction in blood phenylalanine levels, enabling many patients to relax dietary restrictions while maintaining metabolic control. With its broad labeling and durable clinical effects, Sephience represents a new standard of care for PKU and supports PTC's business turnaround after prior revenue headwinds. That's all for today. Thank you so much for listening and reading Biotech Blueprint, and I'll see you back next week.